If you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Let me say good morning and welcome to the April the 19th edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we thank you in advance for all of your listenership. We have a call-in line, which is toll-free. All you have to do is dial 516-453-9921. If you would like to speak with Mr. Fuller, just simply press the number 1 button, and you will get in line so that Mr. Fuller can answer or address your question. We would ask, ma'am, we would ask, sir, that you make your comment brief, please, so that we can get all of the calls in. Some of you have been calling in and wanting 2 questions, and if time permits, we will allow that to happen. But remember your brother or sister and just ask your question, be brief, so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. Because as you know, and if you're new to the program, Mr. Fuller uses logic in answering your question. What do you mean logic, Mr. Bobby? Cause and effect, which also means that he will use examples of that to illustrate the point that he is trying to make. So it can be lengthy, but he does that because the one thing that we do not allow on this program is confusion. So allow that to happen. You can also get in contact with me by the Gmail. That address is the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Sometimes they will be read on the show. More often than not, they will not be. The emphasis will be on the phone calls. So the best way to get your call answered, get your phone call answered, is to call in and let Mr. Fuller answer it directly to you. But if you must, then you can put it on the Gmail, and I will try to get to it. Please do not write me a novel because I will not read it, and some will be deleted automatically by the machine that I have in place. So just keep that in mind. You can also join the chat room, and there are people in the chat room right now, and all you have to do is to go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to see where it says programs, and you want the Produce Justice show. You click on that, and when you do that, there's also a little bar or a little space where you can click on chat and get into the chat room, and they have some outstanding conversations in there that you can get on, and occasionally something will be read, from the chat room. Lively conversation. So you may want to do that if you would so desire to do that. I checked the website this morning, and for all of you who are on the line, and for those who are new to the program, the site is the ProduceJustice.com website. You can get on that, and you can get all the information about the show, about the books, which Mr. Fuller will be talking about. You will hear words like the code, the 4 wants, VGQ. You will even hear I don't know, but all those are in there. Mr. Fuller will talk about his books that he has written, actually his book, but he has had it divided into 3, the 1984 edition and then the edition of the 2016 revised edition. All of them are outstanding. He will speak about that, and you may want to get that to have a guide, a code of suggestions to combat racism, which is white supremacy. You want to do that. Okay, I think this. Oh yeah, one more thing. I checked with the producer this morning, and as of right now, Mr. Fuller is not scheduled as we speak, to be on the Carl Nelson Show on WOL in Washington, D.C. But when he is, that information will be up on the website, and you will be able to get that and hear Mr. Fuller on the Carl Nelson Show, which is an outstanding program in my opinion, but you would have to be the judge of that. But Mr. Fuller is on that. They will contact us, and then I will let you know. But also the website has the official Neely Fuller Facebook page. We say official. That's all the information on there is pertinent, and it comes from the people who gather around Mr. Fuller to protect him and make sure that these words are his words. Okay, with that being said, again, we're going to say good morning, and let's start off with this phone call by going to Adam in British Columbia. Let me see if I can get you in, Adam. Okay, there we go. Adam, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question, sir?
Okay, well, first of all, good morning. I'm out here in B.C. My one question that I have, if a non-white person is charged with a criminal offense, how could they argue that they only pled guilty as a pitiful reaction to the system of white supremacy? That's my question.
Okay.
Can the person use that as a defense?
Yes. My question was, if a non-white person is charged with a criminal offense and they pled guilty to it, how could they argue that they only pled guilty as a pitiful reaction to the system of white supremacy?
Well, they chose to do that, so they could do that. But the question is, would it work as a defense? Because what you want is a constructive result out of anything that you do according to the code. That's basic for everything, every move that you make. You should have it in mind that whatever you do is going to work in order to come out with a product that is just and constructive. So that's the question that you ask yourself before you say anything about anything. Before a person utters an explanation of anything or explains anything or, like on this program, says anything to anyone at any time about anything, what's going to be the result of you speaking? That covers it all right there. When you say whatever you're going to say, so you should anticipate what the result's going to be before you say it. And if you don't know what to say, you just simply say that, because that was the truth. Always go to the truth. If you're in court, find yourself in court in the next 5 minutes, and someone starts saying about you sunk a ship somewhere or something like that, and you say, well, I just got out of bed, and I'm in the Arizona desert. You said I was in the Navy and I sank a ship? I don't know what you're talking about. So you can explain to me what you're talking about, and I'll listen. But right now, I'm not saying anything about it because I don't know what you're talking about, if that's the case. But if you know what they're talking about, and you have already decided what you are going to say about what that person is talking about, regardless of who the person is, then you say that according to the code in order to get the best result. That's it.
All righty. Thank you, Adam, from British Columbia. Since this is the first time you call, don't be a stranger. Let's go to Milwaukee and see if we can get Corey in here. Corey, You're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. My question, Mr. Fuller, is victims of racism, are we all insane?
As victims of racism, are we all what?
Insane.
Yes.
To some degree.
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. Why? Where's the logic? The logic is the system of racism itself is an insane system. It's designed to produce insanity. Why? Where's the insane ingredients in the system of white supremacy? Well, the system of white supremacy is the most powerful government on the planet, and the most powerful government on the planet is the system of white supremacy. And the system of white supremacy itself, as a functioning government, the most powerful, is designed to drive people insane because the system itself is an insane system. Now, what are the qualifications for the insanity in the system of white supremacy? Because it's about mistreating people based on the color of their skin. That's insanity. So anyone who is affected by that system, and everyone, according to the evidence, is affected by the system, because it's the most powerful system of government ever in recorded history here in the year 2022, in the month of April. So it's reasonable, logical, to think of that system as being an insane system. Mistreatment of people based on the color of the skin, and you have a government, a world government, based on that? So in answer to the question, yes.
What's the second part of your question, Corey?
That explanation should enforce that answer, support that answer.
Okay. Corey, your second
part is the code part of this therapy to get us to recognize this insanity and push forward to produce justice?
Supposed to, yes. Every code. See, in other words, why come up with a code if it wasn't opposed to insanity? Everyone on the planet is supposed to be in favor of a healthy mind. Insanity is a non-healthy mind. So people are motivated by what they think, which means use of the mind. So if people are walking around thinking that if a person has color in his or her skin, that person is eligible to be mistreated, and the person is also non-eligible for receiving help that is constructive, that's an insane proposition and an insane practice. So anyone who is promoting that, or anyone who is the victim of it, or anyone who is involved in it directly or indirectly, is, to that degree of effectiveness, and that system affects everybody on the planet, directly and indirectly, in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war. That system is the most powerful system, the system of white supremacy, an insane system. Then you have insanity in all of those areas of activity throughout the entire planet called Earth here in the year 2022. Now that statement is either true or false. Here on this program, the assertion is, the summation is, the logical conclusion is, at the very beginning, that statement is true.
All righty. Corey, thank you so much for your call. One of the topics in the chat room right now was a question that was put forth last week by Mr. Fuller, or suggestion, I would say, about CRT. And Helen B69 asked the group that is in the chat room, what words did you come up with for CRT? One of the suggestions that was mentioned last week was the counter-racist theory, CRT, constructive race theory, constructive racist truth, constructive results truth, and counter-racist truth, CRT. What did you come up with, CRT? Going to Minnesota and the Black Mermaid. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Mr. Fuller. I have a two-part question today. Part of my question is, how should a victim of white supremacy respond to someone saying that they hate white people just because they talk about white supremacy?
Oh, the question is, repeat the question.
Yes, the question is, how should a victim of white supremacy respond to someone else telling them that they hate white people just because they talk about white supremacy?
That they hate white people?
Yes, just because they talk about white supremacy.
You asked the question, where's the hate? What do they mean by hate? And are they saying that if you talk about white supremacy, you're expressing hate? Is that the... Is that what the person is saying? For example, then you have a question. Well, how does that mean that you are spreading hate talking about white supremacy? Does white supremacy exist? And you're talking about something that exists. So you'd have to ask a lot of questions about what they mean by how is that spreading hate? That would be my question. I have been told at one time that I was spreading hate, and I asked the question, I'm spreading hate by doing what? And the person withdrew their charge, because that's a serious charge. I was told. And so when somebody tells you that, even in what you might call an informal conversation, that you are spreading hate, your question is, spreading hate how? By doing what? Let them explain what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. What is your second part of the question, Black Mermaid?
Mr. Fuller just answered it. I was going to ask him if anybody accused him of hating white people, and he just answered the question. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. The Black Mermaid, thank you for your call. Okay. I see you, SWA. Counter-racist thinking, counter-racist thought, CRT. That is a good question. If you're talking about things that, how are you spreading hate by talking about racism that exists? How is that spreading hate? Good question. How is it? Good question. And wait for them to answer it. Marcus, up early out in Long Beach. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I
morning.
recently finished the TV series. I recently finished the TV series Band of Brothers, and remember you previously talking about some of the lessons in that TV show. Could you talk about some of those, because I couldn't find the program in which you were talking about those lessons?
In which I was talking about what now? Band of Brothers. And
yes,
I was talking about what in it?
Lessons in Band of Brothers.
Or in the entire series?
Yes.
Yeah, that's because it's a lot. It's I think it's a 10-part TV series.
Mm-hmm.
Every part consisting of an hour. It's an hour long for each part of 10 parts. So I looked at the entire series a couple of times, and I say that, well, it covers the era that we say, that a lot of people say, and as a cliche description, the greatest generation. But it covers the part that was on the battlefront in Europe. And since that's noted as the greatest generation in all of history, and the centerpiece of that generation, what they call the generation, is World War II. And so you would look for lessons in what's supposed to be labeled as the greatest generation. Didn't say it's the best generation or the loveliest generation. Just said the greatest, which means, I guess, the message that is being sent in that cliche term, the greatest generation, is that outstanding events happened during then. So you look for the outstanding events, and I think it started, and that's why on my movie list I have some elements of the Great Depression, which came just before World War II. It was sort of like an introduction to it, something called the Great Depression. And then came World War II, and both World War II and the Depression is all a part of the package called the Greatest Generation. So Band of Brothers is sort of like showing the military part, which is a huge part of World War II, naturally, of soldiers in Europe. The conquest of Adolf Hitler and his conquest before then. So you look for all of the lessons that are in what is called the Greatest Generation, and you look for the people who were involved in some of the greatest lessons. So some of the greatest lessons can be found by studying details of the military and the characters in it. Now, that's what I got out of it in Band of Brothers. Everything from the way the soldiers trained, the way the people interacted with each other, all the little intricacies of what you might call personalities, and what people valued and what they didn't value, and how you go about handling different situations, and the bloodshed, and there are scenes in it that show something about how the mind works all through it, like the scene in it, for example, that was shown over and over again in retrospect, of an officer who was charging through the underbrush or something like that on the battlefield or across the battlefield, had a rifle in his hand, and all of a sudden a soldier that suddenly appeared from the ground. He was evidently lying down, and so he stood up and looked around, and it was a young boy in a German uniform. Of course, near the end of World War II, Adolf Hitler had what he called the Youth Division or something like that, where there were 12, 13-year-old boys who were put in uniform. Uniforms didn't fit. They were all baggy, and the helmet was too big for their heads and all that. So he just kind of stood up, not being trained, evidently, of what you do on the battlefront, and he smiled at the soldier that was coming toward him. And the soldier, wearing a United States uniform, looked at him. He sees he's a German, and we're on a battlefield. And he suddenly stood up. He was in the grass. I didn't see him. He suddenly stood up as I was charging forward. And so I stopped, and he stood there and just looked at me, and he smiled. He didn't have a rifle in his hand or anything. So then he shot him twice, because that's what you do on a battlefield. All right? You're on the battlefield. You're supposed to have a rifle. Now, if you don't have one, that's your fault. But you get shot on a battlefield, shot dead, as many bullets as it takes to shoot you. Or you get captured. But since it was a surprise move by him suddenly just popping up out of the grass, he had time to assess the situation, but he said, he's wearing a uniform, and he's smiling. He's nothing but a kid. But I'm going to shoot him anyway because that was a reflex. So he shot him twice with him one rifle. Now, what was the lesson in that scene? Things happen. But it haunted him later on. And every time he saw a young boy, he thought about that boy that he had killed. Okay? Even though he had killed many other people before then, that kind of stood out in his mind. And then it showed the death camps of how people can just herd people into an area and systematically start killing them, gassing them to death, shooting them to death, piles of bodies everywhere. And then throughout the entire series. That's what I'm saying. And most of the movies you'll see on my movie list are centered around what they call the Greatest Generation, because also that was about race. Adolf Hitler said, I'm going to produce a superior race. Even though we Germans are superior already, we're going to go beyond that and become super. And that drew the whole world into what we call World War II. Adolf Hitler was all about race and racism. See, all these dark-skinned people, all these misfits, all of these people who are, even the people in the insane asylums, they're just in the way. What are you doing warehousing them? I mean, put them to death. Do it with gas, so that they'll just kind of go to sleep. But put them to death. They're in the way. They cripple people and whatnot. Inferior. This planet shouldn't have any inferior people. Everybody should be fit. And the Nordic people, the Germans, are the most fit of all, mentally and physically. All these dark-skinned people, just push them out of the way until we get established, and then we might just go to work just having an extermination plan for this entire planet of just getting rid of everybody who ain't healthy and strong and white, period. And that was Adolf Hitler's idea. And he was carrying it out as far as he could. So in answer to the question, that's why I center everything around, even the small things you might say, like the combat situations.
All righty. Thank you, Marcus. And the music means that you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. If you would like to be a participant with the show, all you have to do is call 516-453-9921, and if you have a comment, just press the number 1 button and you will get in line. And when we call you, you can be heard and you can ask your questions. Now, don't be slick, as I see some people might be trying to be slick. At least that's the interpretation. But just ask your question. Please make it brief so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question. Okay, you can do that. Okay, make sure you give the call screen of your name. You can also contact me by Gmail, the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. And, of course, you can go into the chat room. I'm here to tell you, not bragging, they be blowing up in there. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to go to the section that says Programs, click on the Produce Justice Show. And then you can go to the place where it says Chat, and you are in there. And one thing about the chat room, and I say this every week, and I'll say it again, that you're able to get it. You're able to get an update. Now, there's my screen messing up on the show, on the shows that are done. Hopefully I can get out of that one. And what's being said, and a review of the show. That's what you do when you are looking for, when your computer screen goes blank and you have to make up time in terrestrial radio. They don't like dead air, so you have to ad-lib. But anyway, Constructive Action Items gives a rundown of what we focused on last week. I look for you, Constructive Action Items. I look for that. I think a whole lot of other people do also. And there are a lot of other people in there. But they have good conversation in there. And right now they are talking about CRT. What does CRT mean to you? So you may want to consider that along with other questions that are there. Okay, let's see here. I want to give a shout out to all those in the DMV, especially those that went to Austin, Texas. Ha ha ha! Smile. Last week, I think it was Swab that mentioned a good movie that you may want to add to your list is A Bug's Life. Now, I have not seen that, but there's some good lessons in that particular movie. But one that I would also recommend would be Mumia, the long-distance revolutionary, talking about Mumia Abu Jamal and what has happened to him. He's still alive and is in prison in, I think it's Greenburg, Pennsylvania. If you get a chance, it's 2 hours and 8 minutes documentary on just what this system does to people. That's Mumia, long-distance revolutionary. It is heartbreaking, but that's what we have to deal with. Okay. A smile from the person in the DMV. Thank you, 888. John, Houston, wait a minute. Do we have a problem? No. Come on, John, you're in.
Grand Rising, gentlemen, and last week in my VGQ you said you couldn't hear. The two books specifically I mentioned was They Were White and They Were Slaves and White Cargo. And ironically, in listening to Mr. Fuller's definition of insanity this morning, I will wrap them together with this question, in that you're describing Adolf Hitler would be Caucasian racist truth. So when we are talking about an insane situation, is the opposite of all that has existed the correct approach? And I had a quick follow-up, if I could, Mr. Bobby.
Let Mr. Fuller answer. Mr. Fuller?
That question was what now?
With an insane situation, as you have described this morning, is not the opposite behavior and action required, whether it gets the constructive results you think or not. But wouldn't that be the first thing, to oppose everything that is insane?
No, you do whatever produces constructive results. And your perception should tell you what is a constructive result. You eat food, and if the food start coming back up and whatnot, it might mean something. That's your body telling you that whatever you ate, your body is rejecting it. So it might be that there might have been something in the food that wasn't food. It wasn't nourishing. It was an antibody. It was something against your body. That's why your body rejected it. So there are all kinds of indications that people get when they're on the correct track. And that's in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment. Does it produce a constructive result? And if it produces a constructive result, you're going in the direction of producing sanity in an insane situation. That's the assumption, the logical assumption.
Well, that's why my last statement would be that if we keep claiming any status of slavery, that's insane by definition. But Assembly Bill 3121 and the situation of reparations was why last week I was talking about those two books, that the actual slaves were, quote-unquote, Slavs, Caucasian, or what we call white people. And thank you for the time this morning, Mr. Bobby. Mr. Fuller, bless you. Please stay with us. We need you badly.
All right, Brother John. Thank you very much. Okay. This is from Mr. Johnson, Mr. Fuller. Now, there are a bevy of questions, but I'm going to combine a couple of them. I guess I'm going to read this over a couple of weeks because there are, I would just say they are a bunch of grape type of questions, if you know what a bunch of grapes are. But anyway, here it is. He says, Mr. Fuller, who put this white supremacy together and what were their intentions?
Whomever put it together, I don't know. I guess it started with maybe just one white person or two white people. I don't know. I've never read anything where people say they know the exact moment that the first white person thought of an idea that let's invent a system of government based on color, and the people who are classified as white will be supreme over all of the people who are classified as non-white and are people who have color in their skin that cannot be identified as white. And we will have a government, a world government, set up on that premise. People have asked me, when do I think that started and who started it? And my answer has always been, I don't know. I have heard different people who say that they are experts on the subject say that, or they say that they have heard people or talked to people who were quote-unquote experts say, well, it's between 400 and 600 years. And then there are other people who have said, no, 2,000 years. And then there are other people who say, well, 6,000. So those are the time frames that I have always been given. But my answer is, on this program and on all others, I don't know, and I have no idea of what the truth is about that. None. But then I also put a footnote to it. I don't need to know. I just need to know that it's in operation now and what to do about it. And that's what this entire program called that you're on now is about, what to do about it. Not how long it's been operating, because that's you can make that a project if you want to, but I don't see the necessity of it.
Mm-hmm.
How long has it been in operation?
All righty. All righty. Let's move on to the state of New York and get some holler from the dollar. Dollar Bill, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen, and I'm glad to be back on. As you know, I'm on vacation for a week, so I couldn't wait. Couldn't wait to get in here and ask a couple of thousands of questions, but I'm going to keep them very simple. Good morning once again. And Mr. Fuller, I was wondering if we can go to the book. The original version of your United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, page 181 would be the page I would like to go to.
You said the
original
original
if you have
book?
your copy. The original version, yes.
Okay, 181.
181.
Okay. All right, wait a minute. Let me see here. 181. Okay. Do you have it, Mr. Fuller? I'm on page 181. You have it yet?
I'm looking it up now.
Okay. Okay, Dollar Bill. While he's looking that up,
okay, I'm right at it now.
Okay.
181 saying what?
Last passage, last paragraph. You want me to read it, or you going to read, Mr. Fuller?
That last paragraph.
Yes, sir.
As long as white supremacy, racism exists, all legal or formal so-called marriages, either directly or indirectly, serve no major purpose except to help maintain, expand, and or refine white supremacy. That's a statement.
Yes, sir. So my question is, for that paragraph, how does legal marriages serve to maintain white supremacy?
They have to maintain white supremacy because white supremacy authorizes people to get married or not when it comes to non-white people. They authorize.
Okay.
They have to recognize whether or not you have a marriage. And in the system of white supremacy, no non-white person on the planet is married in the system of white supremacy unless the white supremacists say so, in which case it means that the person is really not married because they have to be authorized by the white supremacists if they are a person of color, either directly or indirectly. Even though many of the people who say that they are married, non-white, have never even seen a white person. But on account of the system of white supremacy dominating the affairs in all areas of activity of the non-white people of the planet Earth 24/7, and the white supremacists said, they say, by their deeds, by their actions, and by their power, well, you can say that someone is a wife or a husband, but I say that you're all servants to the system of white supremacy, regardless of whom you're so-called married to. So you're really not married if I am the person who has to authorize it, and I don't authorize any marriages between non-white people, even though I'll tell them that I allow them to be married. But they all depend on me. If you're black and you're walking around on planet Earth and you're so-called married, that marriage has to be recognized and are supported by the system of white supremacy. So that being the case, it means you don't have any say-so, so you're really not married, because they are an alien power. If you're a black person on the planet Earth, anywhere, here in 2022, and you say someone is your wife or husband, you can say that, but that can only be authorized by the white supremacists and you can only function according to what the white supremacists say that you can and cannot do, which means you have no control at all, because a marriage is supported by a system that is not hostile to the people who are married. That's the assumption. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a system to support a marriage. And if that system is alien to you as a prisoner of war, prisoners of war are not married to anybody.
Okay.
Once they became prisoners of war, they'll know you are subject to the prison master in the area of sex, in the area of economics, in the area of education, in the area of everything. Why? Because you're a prisoner of war. All black people on planet Earth are prisoners of war as we speak right now, every last one of them, under the system of white supremacy, directly or indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Fuller, on 182, the following page, the next paragraph, could you read that for us?
On page what?
182, the following page.
Following page. And where's the paragraph?
The first paragraph and the second if you want, but the first just to save time.
Beginning with what?
By avoiding legal...
Oh, right at the top.
Yes, sir.
Okay. By avoiding legal and or formal so-called marriage, each person, both male and female, is forced to relate directly and personally to all of the major realities and discomforts of white supremacy in every major area of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, I've said quite a bit in answer to that question, and it might be a little confusing to some people, but let's look at it this way. As we speak right now, you find what? People who say that they are families, but the people have color in their skin. But they will travel thousands of miles through bushes and across deserts or across oceans or rivers, and they will get to a point where they say, we're looking for a place to go where I can be safe with my family. And then someone steps up and says, well, you're coming where I am, and I didn't send for you. They say, yes, because it's too hostile where I am. It has been made hostile by some forces beyond my control. So I'm bringing myself and my family here at this point and hoping that I can get some help from you. Well, I didn't send for you, buddy. But I'll tell you what. I might let one or two of you in, and the rest of you have to stay there until I check out a few things. So now you're saying this is your family, and you all move as a unit, and that you're all looking out. You might have 6 people with you, and you call that family, and you call that a marriage and whatnot. The person who is talking to you is saying, I don't have anything to do with that. And I'm telling you, I'll let this child go through with an escort. Well, I don't have time to be looking out for it. One escort, and the rest of y'all, you stay here. And they say, well, yeah, but we move, we're a family, and I'm married, and this is my wife. Buddy, listen to me. You stay right where you are, or go back where you came from. Do you get that? And I'll let 2 of your 6 people through. Why? Because I got the power over you, that's why. Wherever you came from, maybe the people you came from, maybe you need to teach them how to take care of you and your family. Because if you don't have sense enough to do that and they ain't got sense enough to do it, and you come to me, you're telling me that I got all the sense. So if I got all the sense, you will do what I say. Do you read me, black boy, Negro, brown boy, little brown girl?
And that is very powerful, Mr. Fuller. And while we are here, you might as well read the last two paragraphs, which really summed it up, starting with "if people."
Well, I turned away from the page when I was.
Oh, okay, yeah, 182, because you're really on it. Yeah.
Okay, and you say the last paragraph.
Yeah. If starting with your last two paragraphs, "if people."
Last two paragraphs.
Yeah, if people, especially.
Oh, that's at the top.
Well, okay, yeah, we're at the top. Okay.
All right, so it says, if people, especially non-white people, begin to function in a manner in which each individual person must relate directly to the realities of white supremacy in its less disguised forms, the understanding of white supremacy, how it works, and for what purposes will increase.
And the last
I'm going to say that
paragraph.
again. If people, especially non-white people, begin to function in a manner in which each individual person must relate directly to the realities of white supremacy in its less disguised forms, the understanding of white supremacy, how it works, and for what purposes will increase. An understanding of white supremacy by its victims automatically increases the desire and need to eliminate it.
That's powerful.
The more you understand white supremacy, the more you'll have a desire to eliminate it. But if you don't understand white supremacy, you won't have a desire to eliminate something that you don't understand, and like many people have said, it doesn't even exist.
Exactly.
So why should you be bothered about something that doesn't exist? So therefore, it will never be eliminated. If black people, like many black people have called in on this program, said ain't no such thing as white supremacy, well, then what are we talking about? I mean, we're wasting time. I mean, talking about something that doesn't exist.
Yes, which goes back to your opening statement in every program that I have ever done with you. It simply starts out, if you do not understand white supremacy. And then you complete the full thing. Speaking about that, and thank you very much, Bill, from New York, with your question, leads me right into this discussion with you, Mr. Fuller, in the remaining moments that we have in this hour about your book. Bill referred to the book, and he referred to this book here, the original book. But for the next few minutes, can you speak about your book?
Yes, go to producejustice.com. And the book that I was reading from, which was the original copy, 1984 edition, and that's been updated in the 2016 edition, which is a thicker book, substantially more expensive too, but I couldn't help that. I'd like to have all the books selling for about $6, really. I don't know when I'll be able to do that. But
yeah.
Go to producejustice.com and you will maybe be able to, by purchasing the books, producejustice.com, basically the 2016 edition, which is the updated edition, from the book that I was just reading from, and a word guide that is a supplementary or an addition to the basic book is also there, and it will cover, hopefully, in a way that you can comprehend everything that we talk about on this program, which is basically what is the purpose of this program and the books, the volumes rather. It's all the same book, really, but I couldn't get it within 2 covers. It's wound up at this point of being in 4 covers, 2 volumes. But you can go and get the books by going to producejustice.com, and it's about helping you as an individual person to solve the race problem, since no one has come up with a solution yet. And this is just an addition to a proposal for doing it. And I think that this procedure will work better than any other procedure that anyone has come up with so far, because it's addressed to the individual person. The theory is, if you solve the problem of each individual black person, you'll solve the problem of all black people. I'm going to say that again. If you solve all of the problems of each individual black person on the planet, whatever problem that black person has, you solve that problem for that person. Then, logically speaking, if you're solving the problem of each individual black person on the planet, you're at the same time solving the problems of all of the black people on the planet, all of the people of color on the planet. That's the logic. So the book is addressed to the individual person. A lot of people say, well, no, we got to get together. No, well, anytime black people get together, the white supremacists look at black people together, just like they had them together on the slave ship. The whole planet is a slave ship now. So we're already together on the planet, but we're in the prison system called the prison of white supremacy. So if every non-white person on the planet knows how to deal with the prison system, so that the prison system will no longer affect that individual person, then the individual black person in the prison system, without even having to address another black person about what to do and what not to do, will have his or her problem solved. That's what we want, where you can solve your own problem without consulting Neely, or anybody else. But you have a code, and that's what I'm trying to invent. A code that if you follow it, it won't fail you as an individual person. If you just do what the code says do, every time you do it, it will work. It will produce a constructive result for you as an individual, not the person standing next to you, because they're not doing what you're doing and saying what you're saying. But every time you do it, and every time you say it, it works. And then when the other person sees what you're doing, that's what the code book is for. That person goes to the code book, sees what you saw, they do it, and it works for them. That's when you know that it's scientific, because the system of white supremacy is put together by a code, and it always works, because that's what a code is. Every time you do it, it works. Every time you say a certain thing a certain way, it works. So that's what the books are supposed to be about, helping you to do what works and stop you from doing what doesn't work. And you can get them by going to producejustice.com.
Okay, producejustice.com. I had in the remaining moments, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's close out this first hour, and then we'll get to the second hour. Thank you for your listenership. You've been listening to the Counter Racist Code Show first hour with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And if you have to go, we hope you'll be good, and we'll see you and hopefully hear from you next week. For those of you who will stay for the second hour, oh, man, as in they say in Hawaii, hang loose. We'll start the second hour in about 5 seconds. All righty, welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with today's show, all you have to do is call 516-453-9921, press the number 1 button, and at some point in this conversation or in this hour, you will be heard. So you don't have to ask, can I be heard? You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and I will at some point read some of those whenever the time permits, but the callers come first. And you can get into the hot chat, hot boy, the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com and click on programs, the Produce Justice program or Produce Justice show, and then click on chat. And you can get in there, and man, they be blowing up. Special shout out to my brother across the pond in the UK, JJ. Hey, and if you want to reconstruct all the things that we have been talking about, at least for last week, constructive action items. It gives you that updated list. So I like that. I like that a whole lot. Emery Lumumba, my brother, glad you're in. And Kirk at 16, hello, and more in the chat room. You can do that, and we'll get you in. Okay. Again, 516-453-9921. Make sure you give the call screener your name so I can mess it up. I don't mean to, but I have a propensity for doing that kind of stuff. Okay, Mr. Fuller, before we go to that, Glenda wanted to know this. Can you please ask Mr. Fuller, why do you think it is so difficult for people to ask simple questions?
Because we're not used to asking questions. And we are kind of led to believe that it's best to walk around all day acting like you know everything. People laugh at you when you say you don't know something. The code says, logically speaking, if you don't know something, you just don't know it. You don't come into the world knowing anything, and if you stay here long enough, you're going to leave here not knowing anything, because your mind is going to deteriorate. So you never be embarrassed, that's a part of the code, about what you don't know. If you're going to be embarrassed about once you know that you don't know and you need to know. You should be embarrassed, if you're going to be embarrassed, about not trying to find out. And how do you find out? By asking questions of people who do know. Most information that we get from people who already know what we need to know. So you ask those persons the questions that you need to know the answers to, rather than have to find out everything the hard way, which means on your own. If you're in a bus station and you say, what bus do I catch to get to Fresno? And they'll say, bus A7. And it's down there in the A7 section of this huge bus station or train station or airport of what it is. Look for the sign saying A7. And all you have to do is just go through that gate, and you'll be on the correct vehicle to take you where you want to go. Now, you might have spent 3 hours wandering around there trying to figure it out all yourself without asking anybody anything. But when you ask someone who already knew, things work better for you. So you never should be ashamed to ask questions. And if the person laughs at you for asking the question, saying, "Oh, everybody knows that," you can just simply say the truth. Because everything in codification is about the truth. Said, "No, everybody doesn't know that, sir, ma'am, because I am a person who did not know." Well, everybody who's intelligent knew. Ha, 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 ha. Say, yes. Now, that's why I'm trying to get intelligent, by asking people who have the intelligence to tell me the truth about what I need to know. And if you talk to enough people who will tell you the truth about what you need to know, mathematics says that you might become the smartest person in the entire world if you talk to enough people who know everything about everything. Mathematically, you will become smarter than all of the people who told you bits and pieces of everything that you decided you needed to know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Before I get to you, Ray, I'll read this important Gmail, and thank you, Constructive Action Items, for your response to that. And I'm going to butcher this name, but not on purpose. Ndene, Mr. Fuller, this comes from Ndene from the concept called South Africa. She says, "Hi, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. I live in the concept called South Africa. Most non-whites here do not speak English, let alone read English. And I would assume it's the same throughout the continent. But I might be wrong. I want to share this information with my village people, but the podcast and the book will not work because of the use of English. Most of us here in villages have no idea that we are living under the system of white supremacy. This information can help eliminate most of the confusion regarding our reality today in 2022. Mr. Fuller, can you help me get this information unaltered but written in a language my people will understand?
I've been trying to start that process, and I've been talking to people about it. That's the only answer I can give at this time. I've been trying to get the book printed in different languages, but when and if I can do that, I have no answer at this time, because I want this word to be spread all over the world so that we can get this problem out of the way overnight, which is what I think will actually happen. The entire system of racism will collapse under the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, in my opinion. Everything else has been tried, but a codified approach. And the caller is correct. You can't, if the people can't read the language or is not familiar with the language, someone who can speak the language has to interpret it for them. And so I'm wishing that in the interim, in a compensatory way to make up for what's missing, that whomever can speak the local languages of whatever tribe they happen to be addressing, and they can also read and understand English, that they will read and understand the English that's in the book, and translate as best they possibly can what they are reading and talk about it. If they can't write it, talk about it if they can speak both languages. And I'm not fortunate enough to have the book in all of the thousands of languages that are on the planet. And I understand what the caller's dilemma is, and that's my dilemma too. Because if people don't understand what you're saying, all they hear is just a lot of sounds. That's babble. And that's confusion. And that's not learning either. And you can't get anything done. You have to understand what's being said, how it's being said, why, and everything in order to get anything done with any people, anywhere.
Yes, sir.
Even animals have languages that they understand.
Do. Absolutely. All right, Mr. Fuller. And thank you, the person from South Africa. There's been some suggestions in the chat, particularly from, I think it was constructive actions items, but yes, thank you. Okay, Ray, get ready. Come on, Dallas. Come on. Come on, Dallas. Here we are. Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Go ahead, man.
Hey, Mr. Bobby, I have a CRT submission and a question.
CRT,
my CRT, yes, sir. Circumspection refines tenacity.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, why would the white supremacists allow its victims to speak any language that would compel them to stop practicing white supremacy?
Well, the white supremacists want to be understood when they give commands. So the white supremacists make it their business to learn all languages. But we are handicapped in that we speak so many different languages, like I speak what they call English, that the white supremacists taught me. They didn't teach me any other. They made a few more, like French and Spanish, available on a limited basis, but not as mandatory. And so I can't speak Spanish. I can't speak French. And I certainly can't speak any of the tribal languages, including a lot of the tribal languages on this continent. Every tribe of Indians, people who are called Native Americans, which is a misnomer, but they have their languages, and I understand there are at least 500 tribes. Each one of those tribes have a different language or a variation of languages or an assortment of languages that kind of blend in one with the other in some cases, and then others that are just purely standalone, you might say. And that's 500 different tribes right there, right here on this continent. Now, suppose I just go among a tribe that consists of just 800 people who can speak their original language, a tribe of people who are called Indians here on the north, what is called the North American continent. It would take me probably a lifetime just to learn that language to speak to all of those people. But see, the white supremacists, by being supreme, they'll just say, hey, I don't care what kind of language you speak. I'm not paying no attention to that. From now on, you will speak English, or you will speak Spanish, or you will speak French, or whatever language I choose to teach you. Because if you try to talk to me in your language, I'm not paying any attention to you, because I don't have to. You're the one who has to come to me to get everything that you want. All of you people who are called people of color, You have to come to me. I don't come to you. I don't have to ask you nothing. I take what I want and have taken what I wanted. And you are not confident enough to stop me. You haven't proven that you have that ability. I've proven I have that ability. It's called white supremacy. Don't you ever forget it.
Okay. All righty. Thank you very much, Ray from Dallas. Let's go to Brooklyn. Oh, yeah, Brooklyn. Tassan. Gotcha. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I have two quick and concise questions. Mr. Fuller, as of lately, I've been hearing a lot of allegations towards non-white men, specifically black men, saying that we benefit from black male privilege. And so my question is to you, Mr. Fuller, does black male privilege exist? And I would like to ask my second question after I get that answer.
Does white and black male what exists?
Black male privilege.
Black male prisoners exist.
Privilege, as in white
privilege.
Black male.
The word privilege. Black male privilege. You're saying, does black male privilege exist?
Yes, sir.
I haven't heard that expression. I haven't even heard that expression. Black male privilege. So I don't know what it means. And the procedure, according to the code, is to find out who invented the term and have that person explain what the term means. Or have you heard what it means?
Yes, sir. So the idea
you have heard what it means?
Yes, sir, and I can explain it to you if you would like me to.
And what's the second thing you said?
I said
You've heard what it meant.
It to you if you... Yes,
okay,
sir.
go right ahead so that the audience will know. That comes under VGQ.
So,
you can inform us. If that term is going around, what does it mean?
So the idea is that black men benefit from society as a whole because black men are able to oppress black women in movements and organizations. They cite that black men have been able to practice patriarchy against black women and have been able to oppress other non-white victims of white supremacy. And so as a result, we've standed to benefit from black male privilege. I disagree, but I've been told that black male privilege exists. And so I would like to know if you feel like there are any privileges that we are afforded in society as black men.
Absolutely. Every privilege that we have, the white supremacists give it to us. If the white supremacists say that I, Neely, can walk out of here today and shoot black people and nothing to be done about it, if the white supremacists say that I can and or must do that, now I got a choice to make. Either I will do it, and they tell me, well, if you don't do it, we're just going to get somebody else. So you might as well do it. Now I got a choice to make. Am I going to do it? Because the white supremacists say now, if you refuse to do it, we're going to shoot you right now. And the next black person we get, if that black person refuses to do it, we'll just shoot that black person. We don't have any problem. We just want you to carry out our orders. We don't care which black person we choose to do it. But if we put a death sentence on you, you got a choice. Either you'll do it or you won't. And if you do it, you can breathe another day. When you stop doing it, before I tell you to stop, you won't breathe another minute. Now take your choice. You got 5 minutes to make up your mind. So if they made that kind of deal with me, I would have to make that choice. And man, that's a hard choice. And I'm going to give you a gun, and I'm going to walk you around And I mean, I'm going to tell you what black person to shoot. Because I can shoot any of the black people anywhere on the planet anytime I get ready. And y'all ain't got no stuff for me, all right? But I got everything for you. So don't think you can take me on. Because you got some grandfathers that thought that and all like that. They're not around anymore. That's what white supremacy means. I'm supreme. I can take you out anytime I get ready. And you can't do nothing to me unless I want you to. So that's all we're talking about here. It's white supremacy in answer to your question. White supremacy, that's what it means. Absolute power. So that word privilege or any other words we come up with, if you're black, you come under the dictatorship of white supremacy. Otherwise, we shouldn't even have this program at all that we're on right now, because we'll be talking about something that doesn't exist. But we're talking about something that does exist. Not only exists, but governs our entire move. Every move that we make. According to what? Neely Fuller? No, according to evidence.
All righty. Thank you, Toussaint. Appreciate that. Okay, got a new caller, Cleo, down in Houston. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning. Long live NFJ and forever live Logic. I have a VGQ and a quick question. As a victim of racism, white supremacy, I have devised an operational definition of white supremacy that is comprised of components of the thoughts and speech of Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and myself. I have found that this operational definition as a snapshot helps me as an independent person understand what white supremacy is and how it operates. I share it now publicly in hopes that others who also consider themselves victims of racism, white supremacy, may find it helpful in their independent quest to end the system of white supremacy and replace it with a system of justice. It is as follows. White supremacy is an unjust global system established, cultivated, maintained, and sustained and refined over time by racist man and racist woman for the purpose of white genetic survival and the prevention of white genetic annihilation. It is a system predicated upon the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious fear of white supremacists who believe that their survival necessitates the act of controlling, dominating, and mistreating all non-white people based on skin color aligned with their genetic potential. This body politic is carried out in ethnic queuing fashion wherein white is always right, yellow is mellow and a tolerable fellow, red, we may believe what you said, brown, you can stick around, but black, you get all the way back. My quick question for Mr. Fuller this morning is, while the system of white supremacy exists, does the code call for blacks to refrain from marrying or engaging in sexual play with other non-white people who have a higher level of social acceptability than them in the system, and would doing so also minimize confusion?
All right, we'll let Mr. Fuller answer that question. Mr. Fuller?
Sexual intercourse between non-white people is, logically speaking, permissible in the system of white supremacy. That's code. Any mix of any of the non-white category. See, there are three categories: white people, non-white people, and white supremacists. The dividing line is between the white supremacists and the non-white people. Of course, you have to have white people in order to have white supremacists. But the assumption is, logically speaking, not all white people are white supremacists. That's why you have, under the code, 3 categories. Now, according to the census in the northwestern hemisphere, there's something like anywhere from 21 to 23 categories of what you call racial classifications. In 1860, in the northwestern hemisphere, there were 3: white, black, and mulatto. But the code, in the code book that I have written, I say that there are white people, non-white people, means anybody who has color in their skin, that's non-white. White is not considered a color by the white supremacists themselves. They consider that something else. I don't know what they consider it, but they don't consider it a color. That's why they say colored people, people of color. But white, when you talk about people, is not a color. If you're talking about paint, white is a color. I don't see where the logic is in that, but that's what the white supremacists themselves say. If you're talking about paint, white is a color. If you're talking about people, white is not a color. Now, I don't see the logic in that. So there's confusion there. But according to the code, it's white people, non-white people, and white supremacists. And non-white people are non-white: black, brown, red, yellow, beige, tan, but they're not white. So they can interact with each other as prisoners of war, which is what they all are, and are people who are not white. If you're not white, it doesn't make any difference what shade you might be. The white supremacists say you're not white. There's no such thing as shades of white. It's shades of white when it comes to paint, like you have what they call off-white. I've seen that on a paint can. In fact, I've used some of that, actually, in the old days. I don't know if it's still around. Off-white. Off-white? How far off? I mean, but they call it off-white, meaning it's not quite white. Well, you're either white or you're not. But the white supremacists said, yeah, that's when it comes to people. When it comes to paint, you can have different shades of white. That's confusing to me.
Yes. All righty. All right. Thank you, Cleo. I'm supposed to say don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger. Okay, let's take a station break. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. And for the remaining moments, if you would like to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling this number, 516-453-9921. And when you do that, you can just listen to the show, or if you have a question, you can just hit the number 1 button and you will get in line so that your call can be answered by Mr. Fuller. You could also Gmail me, as some have this morning, at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. And sometimes they will be read. Oftentimes they will be read at a different time on a different program. And, of course, you can get into the chat room. Hey, get a seatbelt because they be blowing up in there. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com. And then you want to click on shows or programs, and the program is the Produce Justice program. Click on that bad boy, and then there's a space where you can click on the chat. And you can get into the chat room and give your opinions. And I would suggest that if you want a review of things, constructive action items gives you a review. Thank you for your contribution, constructive action items to producing justice. But there are some outstanding conversations in there and some directions on some things to do. You'll hear something about the 4 wants or the 10 stops. Justice Warrior had just joined it, so we appreciate that. Very good conversations in there to get some knowledge because we are all still learning. Also like to say that everything that Mr. Fuller is talking about is contained in his works, in his books, simply called the Code Book, which I'm going to have him discuss in a few moments. But it is of my opinion, as a suggestion, that you might want to get this book. If you own an automobile, for example, I think they still put owner's manuals in the car so you can make yourself familiar with the vehicle that you are driving. You want to know certain things. Well, this is like that, if you will. You want to know what's up. You want to know about this racism, white supremacy, and what to do about it, how to produce justice. These are suggestions that Mr. Fuller has obtained in his book through long experiences. He has talked about that many, many times, and I'm sure that someone will ask him about that again, especially they love it when Mr. Fuller talks about the sergeant. Anyway, you can get all this information by going to producejustice.com, and there's also an official Neely Fuller page via Facebook, and you can get that on the Produce Justice site. I was there this morning, and I did see it. Okay. So let's get started this last 28 minutes, and we're going to go to the man, Stan the Man in PA. Stan, get ready. I'm getting ready to click you in here. Okay, Stan the Man, you're on.
Yes, sir. Good morning, gentlemen. Just a quick statement, then a question. Earlier in the show, Mr. Fuller, we were talking about Adolf Hitler. That just brought me to this book that I was reading called Hitler's American Model, and it just talks about how homegrown American racism played a notorious role in the Nuremberg Law of 1935. So I just wanted to mention the connection between what Adolf Hitler did and what was going on in the United States. But the question that I have is, it may sound like numerous questions, but it's really just one question. So just hear me out. Mr. Fuller, you have said that all of us, including yourself, has been a servant in the system of white supremacy at some point in time. I understand what you mean when you say this, sir, but my question for you today is, looking back over your long life and maybe prior to your counter-racist enlightenment, what is the worst thing that you have ever done to support the system of white supremacy? Have you ever violated one of the 10 stops? Have you ever discouraged a black person from entering a white-dominated profession? Have you ever given favor to undeserving white person over a black person? Or have you ever looked at white women romantically? And, just basically, what have you done in the past that keeps you up at night? And I would like to stay on the line to listen to your answer.
Alrighty.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Got you. All right.
None of it keeps me up at night because I was asked that same question in another way about a year or two ago on this program. I think it might have been that far back. But the question was, had I ever made a mistake? And my answer was immediate. Everything I've ever done was a mistake. Why? Because it's just one criteria. Have I solved the race problem? And if the answer is no, that means everything that I have done, Neely Fuller, up to this point, has been in support of the system of white supremacy. So that takes care of all that personal stuff. I don't have to pick through it and figure out what thing I did was worse than this and what thing, or anybody. There's a reason for that type of answer, too, because that's an answer that I say I recommend in a codified way that everybody gives if it's true. And in my case, it is most certainly true, because the criteria is, Fuller, you were put here on this planet, and you came to the conclusion you were put on the planet to solve the race problem. So the question is, Fuller, in the time you've been on this planet, have you solved the race problem? And the answer is, boom, no. That means everything that I have done up to this very moment, and including this very moment, has been a mistake. Why? Because I was put here to solve the race problem, and I haven't solved it. That's why. So that's a slam dunk. See, codification is about, without wandering through every little thing, and because that's what I'm trying to eliminate, wandering. Say, well, did this person now, did Malcolm do more to help, to do something to help the cause than Martin? And what role did Marcus Garvey play? I mean, as compared to Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman. I mean, did he really do anything that's, and a lot of black people have chosen, or someone decided to talk about these things at great length. And I looked at it myself when someone asked me, had I ever made a mistake? And I started thinking in terms of, yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes now. What mistake did I make was bigger than others? All of them are big. You make a mistake, they're all big. Compared to what? Whatever it is you're trying to do, or say you're trying to do, or think you're trying to do. So I'm trying to solve the race problem. Have I solved it? The answer is no. That means, logically speaking, see, because logic don't take no prisoners, okay? It's either logical or it ain't. Either Fuller carried out his mission for being born, or he didn't. And if I don't solve this race problem before I leave here, I wasted the time and the energy that my Creator gave me. Every bit of it. Why? Because that's the goal. That's rough, but it ain't supposed to be easy. That's why it ain't easy.
That's why it ain't easy. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, Stan the Man, R.T. Terrence, and Vision from California. You're hanging on here, so thank you. R.T., Missouri. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, R.T., you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Fuller. I heard somebody ask this on another talk show, and the question was, why do so many black females have children, but they're not with the father of their children? They can't get along with them. They're not with them. Why is that?
The answer is, according to the code, white supremacy. You're not supposed to get along. Why? Because the white supremacy says you ain't supposed to get along. That's why. You could get along if I wanted you all to get along. I can make you do what I want done. I don't want you people to get along with each other in any kind of way. You get along with each other, the next thing you know, you might get the idea that you need to take a look at me and straighten me out. I don't want to give you all, you black people, that kind of time and energy. I want you to spend all your time and energy raising some boys that's going to be killing each other and raising a lot of females. They're going to be saying, I got 4 children, but I don't know where Daddy is. I'll go on TV and I'll receive an award for doing this and doing that and working hard and all like that. And even the black males come on saying, my mama, 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 My mama said this. My mama said that. Have you noticed on television and whatnot, very seldom, if ever, a black male says anything about my daddy? Why? Because the white supremacists don't want him to say nothing about daddy. Because it ain't but one daddy for a black male, and he's white. That's the real daddy.
Woo. Okay. RT, you in. Thank you. Terrence, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Ms. Fuller.
Good morning, Terrence.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. I've been still working on my words. So my CRT is combative reaction to truth, cowards refuting truth, and criminal repetitive tactics.
Keep on working, bro. I like it.
All right. All right. So my VGQ is I talked to my parents, my progenitors, this weekend while we were cooking dinner and doing things, and I generally will play the show while I'm washing dishes or helping them in the house. And my father, you are his boy, his partner, Mr. Fuller. He cracks up. He's like, "How's my main man, Mr. Compensatory, doing?" And so we laugh about it. And so what I was thinking about it, what I tell him is, I said, "See, Pops, you serious about silly things and silly about serious things." But I was thinking about this. We laugh, and it's brought us close together, and then we'll talk about it. So my question to you, Mr. Fuller, according to code, is laughter a tool, a constructive thing, or are we just being silly about serious things and serious about silly things? I like to stay on the line.
All righty.
Well, it's something that when people ask me that type of question, I've asked myself that type of question naturally, because that's the first person I'm supposed to ask. And what's the answer that I give? If it works to produce a constructive result, laughter serves a purpose. Any activity, as long as it produces a constructive result. Now, this is just for a thought that I will throw out here that came from a person named Mr. Petey Green. He's a local character here in Washington, D.C. that used to be on the radio. Some people said he was a comedian. Others say he was a musician. I don't know what label he had for himself. But he did have a TV program and a radio program. And every now and then, Mr. Petey Green would say, "Laugh if you must, but ain't a damn thing funny." If you're a black person, you can laugh. You know, anytime you hear a black person laughing, you're hearing them laughing, but ain't a damn thing funny. In other words, it ain't nothing funny when it comes to black people, because black people is white. It's so dire, it's so messed up, that it ain't nothing funny about it. You can't find no fun in it. Now, that was his view from the way it's registered with me. But the quote is, and he repeated it several times. I've heard him on the radio years ago. He's passed on now. But he'd say, "Laugh if you must, but ain't a damn thing funny."
Yeah. Don Cheadle was in a movie, I think, about him.
I think a movie was made about the life of Mr. Peter Green. I never saw the movie. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all righty.
But it is a thought, because I thought about it, and that's why I'm repeating it. And I basically think that that's something to at least take seriously. When you hear a black person laughing, the one thing you know for sure, there ain't nothing funny.
Or as Petey said, ain't a damn thing funny.
Yeah,
I think
that's where he put it.
like that, yeah, because it ain't. All right, Terrence, I'm going to keep you on. Okay, California. Vision. Wait a minute, let me see. Let's see if I can get you there. David and Dayton, hang on. Vision, you're on.
Hello. Good morning. Okay, so good morning, Mr. Fuller. Nearly 67% of black homes are run by a single parent. Black homes are run by a single parent in the U.S. What is the correct response to black males who abandon or abuse their families and children? You were born in the 1920s of America. Growing up, was it common or uncommon to see single-parent homes? Thank you.
All right.
Was it common or uncommon to see what?
To see single-parent homes.
I didn't get that.
Single-parent homes. Was it common or when you were coming up? Is that right, Vision?
Basically,
yes. I'll
yes.
Repeat the question.
Basically,
Should I
yes.
repeat the question?
Oh, go right ahead.
Thank you. Nearly 67% of black homes are run by a single parent. What is the correct response to black males who abandon or abuse their families and children? You were born in the 1920s of America. Growing up, was it common or uncommon to see single-parent homes? Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Yes. Probably not as much then as now, but it was kind of common. But also, depending on what you mean by single-parent home. For one thing, black people back then didn't move around as much. So what do you call a home and what do you call a single parent? A lot of black people never went to the courthouse to what you might call, what we nowadays call married or shacking up or whatever you want to call it. They did what they call jump the broom. Just a male moved in, Mr. Johnson moved in with Miss Hattie and down the road. And so everybody said they were man and wife because they had a little ceremony one evening after they came out from the field and one person hold one end of a broom, the type of broom you just sweep the house with, sweep the floor with. It's a common broom. And the other person would hold the other end, and the two of them would hold hands and jump over the broom. And as far as they were concerned, they were married. There's no license, there's no nothing. And the white supremacists didn't care because they didn't care much about anything the black people did as long as they didn't make trouble for white people and did what white people told them to do. They didn't care whether it's married, single, whatever. I don't care what y'all do over there on the other side of the tracks. Just don't disturb my peace. So in a lot of places it was that way. Now, when people became more urbanized and moved into the cities, then the white supremacists started kind of tightening up everything about who was supposed to be doing what on account of wasn't in it. The housing situation influenced a lot of that, in my opinion. Now, there are people who know more about that type of thing in detail than I do, the people who know a lot about the history of black housing. Mm-hmm. But the housing situation, the farming situation, the type of jobs people had, required sometimes for white people to have more detailed information about black people and what they were doing from over on the other side of the tracks. But so, in answer to that question, it's difficult to answer for me in a way that I could say anything other than just some things that I have observed that it became important in some places about whether a black male was abusing a black female or not. And in other places, the law enforcement said, you all straighten it out over there on your side of town. You got a black constable over there, some black person that we said keeps order, so let him straighten it out. And sometimes that would be the case. A farmer who part-time was a sheriff for the black people. So he would hitch up his mule and all like that and walk down the road or ride down there and say, you know, that I heard y'all had a fight last night and Mr. Johnson hit Miss Alice over the head. Is that what y'all did? Now, do you want me to take him to jail, Miss Hattie? And say, well, I don't want him to hit me again. Well, now y'all got to agree now to kind of get along, because you know I don't want to have to come over here and take you downtown to the white folks, because you know what that means. And they say, yeah, we do. You know, so y'all just kind of get along now, and don't make no trouble for me, because the white folks asked me to straighten it out, and I ain't got time. I got to get my okra out. And I got two boys that's up there in Detroit, and they're in trouble. I got to worry about them. I don't want to have to worry about y'all down here now. So, you know, we all see each other in churches this Sunday, okay? Y'all coming to church this Sunday? Yeah, we'll both be there. Well, y'all stop all this hitting. You know, because the preacher's going to talk about it if he gets wind of it.
Yes,
you know that.
Will. Maybe that's where that song comes from.
Now, the lady asked me about the things I have observed. That's the kind of thing that went on. All right?
Yes, sir.
It was real informal. And at the same time, serious. But if you ask me about statistics and how much more of it was in some towns than in others, and what's the difference between some rural area in Kansas or Oklahoma and Arkansas and Chicago, it's different scenarios. You have to ask different people about what their experiences were.
Yes, sir.
Because they were all over the place, different types of experiences.
Somebody wrote a song, Oops, Upside Your Head. Oops, Upside Your Head. Dayton, David, the Gem City of Ohio. You're in. I think you're going to be our last caller of the day. Go ahead, David.
How you doing, Mr. Bobby? How you doing, Mr. Fuller?
Go ahead, David.
I'm still learning.
Okay. Quick question here. Mr. Fuller, do you think the white supremacist has a white supremacy playbook? And do you think
One
your
question
book,
at a time, David. One question at a time.
I'll answer that question. Yes, everything that they do is their playbook.
And do you think your book could counter it?
Do I think that my book could counter what they're doing?
Correct.
Yes, that's why I wrote it. I use what I wrote myself. That's why I started writing it. I wrote it for me. I started writing for me because I didn't know how to handle things. So I said, I need to have some notes or something in my pocket where I don't have to scratch my head every time something comes up or run around trying to figure something out. I need to have something already figured out before it happens. And that's how I started writing in 1956. I was overseas in Japan. I had a lot of time, what they call free time, quote unquote, and I had time to think. So I was thinking of different situations that might come up. And Fuller, how would you handle this situation? And that's basically what the code book is all about. How every black person can handle different situations. I don't have all the situations in there, but some as a sort of a guide, because there's a best way to do everything. There's a best way to say everything in every situation. So the key is real simple. Find out the best way to do everything and the best way to say everything.
Yes, sir.
Because doing and saying is what makes everything what it is among the people of the planet. So if you if I know the best way to go about doing everything, the very best way that can ever be done, and I know the very best way to say everything that's ever going to be said, boy, education doesn't get no better than that.
I heard that. Rita wrote to 888 wrote to Be Good One. Said Mr. Fuller addresses about relationships, sexual relationships, in the 8th area of people activity to ask questions, constructive action items. Said there are over 100 questions in there. You don't have to have sexual relations. Don't have sexual relations with anyone until they answer all your questions to your satisfaction. For those that don't know, those are some of the things that are in the book. Mr. Fuller, I got about 2 minutes to get you to talk about your book, then I got to close it out.
Yes. That's what I mean. Do's and don'ts. Things to do, things not to do. That's what the book is all about, really. The best way. Now, I'm not saying that it'll work out being the best way, but in my opinion, everything I have written is not gospel, because gospel means, according to the code, it's absolute. If you do it, it's going to always work for you. I just put them in there as suggestions that I hope it will work for you, but I haven't run tests on everything that I have suggested. I've run tests on some things, but based on logic, I mostly try to direct the person who reads whatever's in the book, and it's got to make sense to the person who is reading it. Go to producejustice.com to get the book. Whatever you read, if you run a test on it, you think about it and see if it makes sense to you before you even test it. It's got to make sense to you. And then if you try it and it works, stick with it. If not, it's not supposed to be in the book, period. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't produce a constructive result, go to producejustice.com in order to order the book if you want it, if you decide you want it.
That's exactly correct. Well, I'd like to thank all of those who were participating in today's program, particularly those who were in the chat room, which is still going on. Some great information suggestively if you would like to entertain yourself or still learn. Some great suggestions from there. And they're from the suggestions that Mr. Fuller has made from his book that you can get by going to producejustice.com. Even the person in South Africa, yes, all that information is right there, and even information on the podcast. So, again, thank you to you all for your calls. Thank you for all the technicians and the call screeners. And Robert, haven't called Moon Pie in a long time, but thank you. But for all the activities that we have on here. But most of all, Mr. Fuller, I'd like to thank you for allowing all of us to have a chance to listen to your suggestions. The final word, Mr. Fuller, 30 seconds.
Well, the final word for today is I grade myself on focus and clarity, and I don't think I had very much of that today. I want to tell the audience that.
Okay.
But I will try to do better next time. And that's why I'm saying don't center on Neely Fuller as being anybody's leader. I am not qualified to lead anybody. I'm not qualified to lead a mule to water. I just have some suggestions that I think will work.
Okay.
If people do them on their job or when they interact with their mate or what they consider their family members, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. ProduceJustice.com. Thank you. We'll see you next week.